But our next session coming up first is going to be highlighting Clowder previewers, and is given by Mike Lambert here at NCSA. So happy to introduce Mike's talk now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Lambert. I'm a research programmer at NCSA, and I'm here to tell you about data previewers in Clowder. As you've heard, Clowder is a research data platform that allows users to upload and organize files into datasets. Previewers allow us to customize the visualizations for these uploaded files. Previewers are extensible, so new previewers can easily be added if we don't currently offer what you're looking for. Previewers allow you to customize your user experience according to what type of data you're sharing or exploring. Here's what an uploaded file looks like if no preview is attached. As you can see, it's very plain. Clowder claims that this is a TIFF image, but we don't even know if the uploaded file is really an image at all. Since this is a fairly large image at 112 gigabytes, it would be unreasonable to expect a user to download this entire file simply to find out what it looks like. Instead, we can save the user a lot of time and trouble by simply building up a small preview of what the file looks like and display it directly in the user's browser. Here are some examples of previewers that offer unique and rich visualizations of domain-specific data. The first one is a visualization of using computer-aided diagnosis to analyze whole slide images taken during a renal biopsy. The second provides a visual estimation of canopy coverage for a field of crops. And the third analyzes images of growing plants to provide various measurements and metrics regarding their growth and health. Using previewers, we can render a preview of the file contents and allow the user to visualize the file without needing to download it directly. We can parse text, provide embedded video players, or simply shrink down an image to show a smaller resolution thumbnail of the picture. We can also provide a 3D model viewer for advanced formats like OBJ. This allows users to view, rotate, and interact with an OBJ model without needing to download it or install some complicated software to render it locally. In Clowder, one or more files can be uploaded to a dataset. Previewers will operate on those files to attach previews to them. Files can have multiple previews attached. And all of the previewers will be shown to the user when viewing the file in the Clowder UI. Some previewers utilize an extractor as well to expand upon and provide further details for the file in question. For example, given a video clip, this person tracking previewer will attempt to track individuals in the clip and outputs a chart of when each unique individual was present in the frame of the video. Similar to the person tracking previewer, previewers and extractors can work together with external services to perform even more complex analysis of the domain data. One such example of this is the way that the geospatial previewers work. When these extractors are configured, a GeoTIFF image or shapefile uploaded to Clowder will trigger an extractor. The extractor will run on the file that triggered it and process that file into one or more layers. It will then upload these layers to GeoServer and produce appropriate metadata in Clowder that maps back to the layers in GeoServer. The previewer then can query Clowder and GeoServer to render a rich preview of the image that allows the user, for example, to zoom in and out. Here's another example of a geospatial extractor that works on an entire dataset, where each file is a separate layer. This previewer will overlay all the layers on top of each other and give sliders for adjusting the transparency of the individual layers. This way, we can give the user a full view of the different geospatial layers in the dataset. Another dataset previewer, on the right, will look at all the files in the dataset and create a donut chart that shows the distribution of the different file types that are present. As you can see, datasets can have previews as well. Dataset previewers will operate on all of the files in the dataset to produce previews. Datasets can have multiple previews attached to them just as the files can. In fact, Both of the dataset previewers that we saw previously could be used to describe the same dataset. Here's an example of a previewer that doesn't require an external extractor, but does require additional metadata to be attached to the resource. The Vega Previewer allows the user to attach a custom schema to the file that configures how to display the data. You can upload a CSV file and provide a JSON schema in the metadata for how to render the visualizations. The previewer will handle the rest. This is a very flexible pattern because the user can choose to adjust the metadata schema at any time without needing to contact the administrator to enable further functionality in Vega. Some previewers can even be interactive, allowing the user to manipulate the preview to gain or offer further insight into the data. For example, this previewer allows you to select a section of a PDF document and comment on it. Another, given a video clip, allows the user to split the video into various sections. Both of these previewers offer different ways of using Clowder to empower users to collaboratively edit on a project. As further examples of more powerful previews and visualizations, this is a previewer for visualizing images taken during a patient's MRI. This previewer uses Papaya.js to render nifty or .nii files with some extra exploratory options. The result is a rich visualization that allows the user to very easily communicate with others about the domain data. For example, hovering over this preview with your mouse will give you a crosshair and a set of coordinates of where you're hovering over, and provides a cross-section of the 3D image at the given coordinates in the panels on the right-hand side, making it easy to identify and share where a particular anomaly occurs in the image. Another example of an interactive previewer is the 3D Hop Files Viewer. The Heritage Online Presenter is a 3D model viewer that is able to be rendered by your web browser. Uploading a PLY or NXZ file will offer the users a previewer that allows them to see the model and rotate it in 3D space. Now that we've seen examples of what previewers can do, how do we create a new one for ourselves? For example, let's say the user uploads a sound file and we want to produce an embedded audio player similar to what you see at the top left. All we have to do is create a new Node.js package with two files, a JS file and a package.json. The package.json file mainly tells Clowder what code to run to produce the preview and which file types the preview is valid for. The JavaScript file then takes care of building up the preview and attaching it to the appropriate tab in the Clowder UI. What if we wanted to write a dataset previewer? For example, remember our donut chart from earlier with the distribution of the file types? Let's say that we wanted to create a previewer that looked something like that. So the process is mostly the same. We still need to produce the package.json file. We still need a JavaScript file as our main executable. We can also include a CSS file to describe the look and feel of our visualization. Furthermore, since this example uses an external library, as you can see in the main.js at the bottom right, we can actually load external libraries as well. This gives us the flexibility of loading D3 into the previewer and then use it to produce our donut chart. Once we've created our custom previewer, we can deploy it to a Clowder instance by dropping our source code into the custom public JavaScript previewers folder. This will allow the Clowder UI to call into our previewer source code and render our preview just the way we want it. While this is currently a manual process of copying over the source code, it would be nice to come up with an approach that made it easier to automate these deployments. One pattern that might make this a little bit easier is if we were to package up previewers as individual JavaScript modules. This pattern would use npm to install previewers to the correct directory, instead of needing to manually copy over the source and drop it there yourself. This pattern seems like it'd be relatively easy to adopt, given that we already use package.json, a well-known npm convention, to store metadata about what the previewer is for, and how to run it. We could expand upon the information provided in the package.json file, and use that to publish the JavaScript previewer to an npm registry. This way, other people who wanted to use the previewer could simply go into their instance and run npm install on our module to install it into their own custom instance. As you've seen, we offer a few different types of previewers. We've shown dataset and file previewers, but I should note that file previewers actually have two distinct subtypes: raw bytes or preview object. Some file previewers will work with the raw bytes of the file to render a preview every single time. For larger files, where it isn't reasonable to read all the bytes so often, the previewer can actually create a preview object in the database that stores a subset of the derived preview data. We also have experimental support for previewing collections of datasets, but this is currently disabled in the UI. There are some limitations to keep in mind when using this pattern. For example, the preview will always be rendered in the user's browser, so we want to be very mindful of the memory footprint that we're using on the client's device. For example, for large files, using a preview object is almost always preferred instead of reading the raw bytes, as reading a large file into the user's browser memory can very quickly bog down their machine and cause it to fail. Similarly, showing too many previews on an individual file or dataset can make it really difficult to see all of the previews. This is because when multiple previews are present on an object, we show an individual tab for each preview. To address the last point, we are trying to think of new ways to present previews when there are multiple or many present. Our current UI, as mentioned, simply displays a tab for each preview, but it would be nice to offer a view that shows all of the previews at the same time. Ideally, when multiple previews are present, we could create a mosaic of all the available previews, or allow the user to set a default preview that suits their needs. This is a deceptively difficult problem because some of the previews actually encompass all of this data already. For example, our person tracking extractor that we saw earlier. In the scenario we laid out earlier, a video file gets uploaded and produces a preview of the video itself, a thumbnail of the video, as well as the person tracking preview. As you may have keenly noticed, the person tracking preview actually encompasses the other two previews that we have offered here. If we had a way of setting the person tracking preview as being the default preview for this dataset or for this file, that might also suit our needs. If you have any ideas or other custom previewers that you might want to contribute back to the Clowder framework, feel free to stop by on our Slack or GitHub to ask questions or contribute ideas back to the project. Our Slack can be found at clowder-software.slack.com, and the source code for the project can be found on github.com/clowder-framework/clowder. Feel free to stop by if you have anything to contribute back or have questions about creating or running a previewer for yourself. We've seen that previewers allow us to provide custom visualizations for files and datasets. We can integrate these previewers with extractors or external services to further enrich the preview with unique data. Previewers allow you to provide a customized user experience that increases your engagement with your users and their understanding of the data. Choose from a long list of previewers that are already available in Clowder, or add your own previewer and deploy it to a Clowder instance to start using it immediately. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Mike, there is one comment in the chat that reads, with GetScript, it seems possible to load an external service that can render the file. Is it also possible to let that external service filter the raw bytes before sending them to the client for preview? assuming that the service lives near the data and can handle the raw data size.
Yeah, similar to, I believe that should be possible. Thank you for the question, David. I believe that should be possible given the current pattern. So similar to the example that I showed with GeoServer, if there's processing that needs to be done on the raw bytes before the preview can be rendered from the raw data, that can be done using an extractor. So the file gets uploaded or if a data set is being changed, then the data set is downloaded by the extractor, which can then build up a preview object and push that back into Clowder. And then when the previewer goes to render, it doesn't have to read the raw bytes of the file directly. It can use the preview object. And also, if anybody has any ideas of other previewers that you'd like to see, or different external libraries that you're curious if they would mesh well, feel free to ask about those as well.
Hello, Mike. David has a follow-up question. Is it possible without an extractor? I'm looking at something that's half the data size, but still several megabytes per project.
That might be a better question, better posed to Luigi or Rob. I feel like currently the extractor is the way that we propose to do that. If there's some reason why an extractor wouldn't fit in that circumstance, they might be able to shed some more light on possible alternatives there.
I think, Mike, you kind of covered it maybe quickly in your answer already, but besides the extractor aspect, there's this idea that if you have a custom service that you want to run behind the scenes, sorry, I'm reading the rest of the question mostly because I don't want to save the data for every file since it will be many terabytes. Yes, so similar to the GeoServer, basically you can have any service in the backend do processing on the fly. And so the way that previewer would change, it's simply like we do with the GeoServer, is that instead of taking a previewer object, it will basically call some endpoint that will do that computation for you on the fly. So you're basically running a separate service that's dedicated to that preview. And then in the metadata, that's what the way we currently do it. You basically define how to go and get that. But you can also, you don't have to even specify in the metadata. It could be embedded in the previewer. The previewer can easily talk to an internal service that you deploy next to the Clowder that does that thing, passes in the file ID, and that obviously that internal service would have to have permissions to get the raw bytes and then return them to it. So we have similar patterns. Thank you for the question.